Thank you everyone for joining us. Either you join us through Zoom or you join us through Facebook live streaming. We appreciate you for being here with us. We are very excited. Today is the first day of our 4-day event called International Forum on Youth, put together by a bunch of very dedicated people to international education and just to student success and engagement in general. This morning, we had a wonderful opening talk by Dr. Brent Riffel, one of our 2 faculty co-leads on this forum. And then this afternoon, we had Mr. Tim Hanadel, who talked about system thinking and then species migration, which have some very thought-provoking discussion. And tonight, I'm just even more excited with Dr. Reagan Romali's presentation. And I want to say a few words just for my own interaction with Dr. Romali. I mean, I can read her bio, which I will, but what impressed me about Dr. Romali was I first met her. She was a speaker invited by our chancellor to talk to a lot of vice president and the deans and about leadership. And at that time, I was just naturally drawn to her because your experience, Dr. Romali, and also how you communicate the vision about community college, vision about student success, and your diverse background. Overall, I just always feel, wow, one day if I had the privilege of inviting her to my own event, that's what I'm going to do. And then, like in this time, thanks to Saab and Brent's support, that we were able to also have Dr. Romali to come and speak with us. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to introduce Dr. Romali background just a little bit. Dr. Reagan Romali currently served as the Interim Vice President for Administrative Services at Los Angeles Mission College. It is part of the Los Angeles Community College District. She previously served for 9 years as a college president, including 3 years as superintendent president of the Long Beach Community College District and 6 years as president of Harry S. Truman College, one of the city colleges of Chicago. She's a nationally recognized educational leader who has achieved groundbreaking work in student success, increased graduation rates, increased transfer rates, and equitized outcomes. One of the most exciting opportunities of her career was when she served the Houston Community College on a venture to open a new community college in the Middle East nation of Qatar, the first community college in that country. Dr. Romali has a multicultural family with 2 adopted sons from the People's Republic of China and has lived outside the United States twice. Without further ado, welcome Dr. Romali.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here today. I want to start by thanking Dr. Diane Van Hook, Chancellor of College of the Canyons, Dean Cheng Levine, and the faculty and the staff from the International Students Program, who I'm so honored and so humbled to know and consider them, in addition to colleagues, I consider them my friends. So I want to thank you so much for all the hard work you did today to bring such exciting content to students at the College of the Canyons and faculty and staff at College of the Canyons. My name is Reagan Romali, and today I'm going to talk to you about one of the most exciting experiences of my life that was life-changing. And what happened about 10 years ago, in 2010, I was given an opportunity to be hired by the Houston Community College system to go overseas to the Middle Eastern nation of Qatar and lead about 50 American people to help the Qatari government set up the nation's very first community college. And as Dean Cheng Levine mentioned, I'm very passionate about the students in the community college mission. So I saw it as the opportunity of a lifetime, and it was far beyond my dreams. So I'm excited to talk to you about it today and get your input. So the title of today's presentation is The Importance of the Community College Experience, Interconnectedness Lessons from Opening the American Community College in the Middle East. Now, here's a picture of the college that we opened. Isn't it fascinating? It's a 3-story building. It started with 300 students. in the nation of Qatar. And now there are thousands of students graduating from this school that started from an idea 10 years ago. So that's really, really exciting because education can, as you know, change the world. And today we're going to talk about the migration of people and the migration of educational systems, and we're going to learn some great lessons from that. I want to start by saying that I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on this, on the culture of Qatar or the religion of Islam. All I can do is speak to my incredible lived experiences as an American expatriate helping a community college get set up in Qatar. So I want to start off with saying that. And I know that each person's lived experiences are different. Mine were fantastic. I want to start today's lesson by giving you hope and motivating you to talk about the opportunities that are available in migration and the kinds of things that come out of migration, and the power of the American Community College to change the world, literally change the world. When we first got there, when 50 of us landed in the middle, uprooted our entire lives and landed in the Middle Eastern nation of Qatar, I met with a male student, and he said, "I don't like you at all. I don't like any of you." A few months later, he said, "You're all right. It's not like I want to be your friend or anything, but you guys are all right. I don't mind you." By the end of the first year, he said, "You guys are pretty cool and I want to be friends." That was magical to me. The kind of connections the American Community College can make are really powerful. And trust me, I was changed for the better for having had this experience. So let me start by telling you a little bit about the state of Qatar. In Arabic, it's pronounced Qatar or Qatar. So it's the little thumb on the edge of Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. It's this tiny little nation that is that thumb that comes out of the side of Saudi Arabia. It's on what we as Americans know as the Persian Gulf. Due to a lot of conflict that has happened over time between the Arab world and Persia, now Iran, in Qatar, they refer to it as the Arabian Gulf. So the Arabian Gulf and the Persian Gulf are the same thing. Now, a lot of people ask me, "Oh, you went to Dubai?" No, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which are well-known cities, are a part of a country called the United Arab Emirates, which is a completely separate country from Qatar. You'll see it just south on the map there on that sort of boot part of Saudi Arabia. Qatar is a member of what's called the GCC, and that's called the Gulf Cooperation Council. That's made up of the countries that border the Arabian Gulf, which is the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain. What they do is they got together and they decided that since there was the oil fields there in the Arabian Gulf were so rich that they could work cooperatively together for economic and political gain. And as we know now, with as prominent and as prosperous as that area is, we know that working together in concert like that proved very successful for them. In the state of Qatar, Islam is the official religion. And you will see Islam permeate throughout the culture. It's really fascinating to see. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the interesting things in Qatar is that every religion, and Allah, which is their name for God in the Islamic religion, permeates their language. So for example, in the United States, we say, "Hello, how are you doing today?" And you say, "I'm great, doing good. How are you?" In Qatar, they say, "How are you doing?" And the response is Alhamdulillah, which Allah is a portion of that word. And that means I'm good, thanks to God's grace. So in all of their daily colloquial language, you will find Allah in there. So religion permeates the society. And I thought that was a very fascinating and really interesting and rich part of their society. Their emir, now emir stands for king or ruler, his name is Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Now, the reason Qatar and the experience that I had there opening a community college was a rich example of migration is that in the state of Qatar, there are 2.6 million inhabitants. 88% are non-citizens, and we're going to talk in detail about that. So a little overview of history of the migration of the Qatari peoples. In 661 to 1782 is referred to as the early and late Islamic people. Qatar was very famous at that time for horse trading, for horse breeding, for camel breeding. One thing you have to do when you're there is ride a camel and get that experience. But in the 8th century, Qatar began positioning itself because it was strategically located on the Arabian Sea. So they started to begin shipping and trading pearls. Now, if you go to Qatar now, if you go to one of the souks, which is an open air shopping area, there are pearls are ubiquitous, and you can watch a man make a pearl necklace for you or a pearl bracelet right in front of your eyes. You pick out the pearls you want and they make it for you. It's truly beautiful. The ships that were trading along these routes at that time in the 8th century were heading from Iraq and headed over to India and China, and they stopped at Qatar and picked up pearls to trade over in the Far East. They dropped off, when they came back, they would drop off Chinese porcelain, Thai artifacts, West Indian coins, and return with pearls. Later in 1783 to 1868, we saw a more migration of other Arabian peoples moving into the area. In 1766, members of the Al Khalifa family of the Utub tribe confederation migrated from modern-day Kuwait to Zubarah in Qatar. So this was a migration of the Arabic peoples into the country, which was followed by what's called the British period, which is 1916 to 1971. And Qatar has been ruled by the House of Thani since Mohammed bin Thani signed a treaty with the British in 1868 that recognized its separate status. After a long history of Ottoman rule, Qatar became a British protectorate until the late 20th century when it gained its own independence in 1971, which brings the migration of the people there to 1971 to present. You will see, because of being a British protectorate, you'll see a lot of people from the UK there. You will meet a phenomenal number of English people, Scottish people, Irish people, Welsh people. It's fascinating to meet people who speak English, but have a completely different perspective of the world there. It's really wonderful. But in 1971 in Qatar, some very interesting things happened historically. The Emir Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani seized control of the country from his father. His father was Khalifa bin Hamad Al Thani, who was in Switzerland at the time. So took control from a peaceful coup was mounted against his father, and he took control of the country. And as a side note, when you see the word bin, B-I-N, that means son of in the Arabic language, just like Ben in the Hebrew language means son of. So a lot of similarity there. Now, this brought a huge change to the country, which brought in migration from all over the world that we're going to talk about. He launched the Al Jazeera news network that you're familiar with today, which is one of the most accurate news reporting agencies in the world, which is housed out of the capital city of Doha. He brought about women's right to vote in the country. He brought the first written constitution. And many of you may know, because she's a very famous public figure, his wife, Sheikha Moza bint Nasser al-Misned. She's referred to as Sheikha Moza publicly. She is actually, we're going to see later, the founder of the community college. Here we go. Alrighty, so we're going to go into a little bit more detail, but to give you an overview of what were the factors that led to the creation of a community college in this Middle Eastern nation. There was a lot of things going on at the time that led to a perfect opportunity to come forward to build a community college. The first thing that happened was Qatar is a country of great wealth. They're the third highest GDP in the world, and a World Bank high-income economy. So there's a lot of money circulating there with a strong economy. At the same time, they wanted to become a global powerhouse. They want to expand their tourism. They want to expand their transportation industries. At the same time, the youth there grew up with the wealth of their oil and natural gas, and so need relevant training. At the same time, they are discovering natural gas reserves and have developed the third largest natural gas reserves in the world. At the same time, there's a high migrant population. We talked about there being 2.6 million people, but only 300,000 of them are actual Qatari citizens. So that's an interesting thing that we're gonna see happen in this economy that we're gonna talk about in a minute, where 95% of their workforce is made up by migrants. So this creates a perfect storm of opportunity for the country to start a comprehensive internationalization of learning through an educational system. Whoops. There we go. So let's talk a little bit more detail. Qatar, we talked, had great wealth. Their economy is built on the shipping. It moved into the pearl trade, and it later expanded in what you know today now as strong oil and natural gas. They're now expanding also into construction and tourism. And what you may not know is that the Qataris own huge pieces of property in London and plan to do a tremendous amount of expansion in the UK. What you may not know is they have positions in Harrods. They own 95% of the Shard, in Chelsea Barracks and the Olympic Village. So they own large parts. The next thing we want to know that's going on is that the Qatari youth today were raised in great wealth. So if you come from great wealth and you didn't have to go to work at McDonald's and say, may I take your order, please? I'll take a Big Mac and a large fries, and go home sweaty and hardworking, what happens? They have grown up wealthy. And so what happened was Sheikh Moza, who was a very progressive, forward-thinking wife of the ruler, the emir, she wanted her youth to be able to not rest on their laurels, because she knew that generation over generation, if you allow other people to run your economy, you're giving away your knowledge base, you're giving away your technology base, you're giving away your power. And so she wanted her country, she was such a forward thinker, she wanted her country to remain powerful and relevant and prosperous for her beloved citizens. So she wanted her youth to learn new technologies, that whether that's construction technology, oil and gas, natural gas, so that they could continue to have prosperous country for many generations to come. So all this is going on at the same time. Now, another thing that's going on at the same time, as you'll see down in the bottom right-hand corner, is that the conflicts in the Middle East are causing wide fluctuations in the crude oil prices over a 30 to 40-year period. You'll see that the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, the Gulf War, the Asian financial crisis, 9/11, this all caused wide fluctuations in the price of crude oil. And so it impacted their economy. So they thought, you know, we need to stabilize this. We need to make sure that we can have a prosperous future by stabilizing the price of crude oil. So what they did is they developed, and you'll see that is the Arabian-Persian Gulf and the line that demarcates Iran from Qatar. They developed something called the North Field. You'll see that there, a North Oil Field that brought in the new revenues to stabilize their oil income after all those multiple civil conflicts. And Sheikh Hamad's coup really changed the landscape of Qatar. He fast-tracked the development of that field, and the country began for the first time ever exporting liquid natural gas. Now you say, well, why is this important? Well, they needed to be able to train people for how to maintain those, because at the beginning they were bringing in people from foreign countries to run these oil fields, and they wanted to train their own population in how to run and manage and understand the technical aspects of these oil fields. So he very quickly built 14 natural gas plants to accommodate the global demand. And we saw a huge migration of European and American and UK oil companies move into the area and move workers into the area. So that was bringing about a migration of American thinking, European thinking, British thinking into the area, which had an interesting effect that we'll see. By 1997, they realized they needed, as any company does, to diversify their base, and they brought in Japan and Spain as some customers for their natural gas. So you're seeing where they're going to need to educate their population on all this new technology. Another factor that's really going on at the same time is that Qatar really wanted to expand its global reach and influence. Banking, such as QNB, wanted to expand its operations in Qatar. Qatar wanted to seek to expand hydrocarbons. They wanted to expand into the steel market to take advantage of things they were going to do in construction. There were really iconic infrastructure projects where students of architecture would want to go and visit. You may have heard Google Cloud is opening a new data center in Qatar. They wanted to expand their power plants, and they've contracted with GE to do so. And Qatar Airways, if any of you have ever flown it, it's a very luxurious airline, and it's one of the fastest growing airlines in the world. So all this is leading up to the need for an educational, technically trained population, so that they can ensure their dominance on the world scale for generations to come. At the same time, some really exciting things happened, and I was there for this. If any of you are soccer fans, World Cup soccer fans, in 2010, Qatar was awarded the contract for the FIFA World Cup 2022. And they had never qualified prior, and they spent about $200 billion to bring the World Cup. Now, what happened on the day that this was announced? Soccer fans went bananas, just bananas. They were so excited to have the FIFA opportunity come to their country. And at night, they held an impromptu celebratory national pride parade that came out of nowhere. And you see these pictures on the right of people with flags. They decorated their cars in Qatar 22. They wore their national scars, and they were wearing the flags around their neck. And it was so exciting. And they were riding down the streets and honking their horns. And it seemed like the whole nation had come out to celebrate. It was a really cool experience to be there and see that. But with the FIFA 2022, that meant that they needed to build stadiums. They needed to build training facilities, hotels, tourism options, places for tourists to go. At the same time, they needed to ensure that people who came to these events in Qatar respected the culture. So if you go to a traditional soccer game, people don't have their shirts on, or they're drinking beer, or they're hooting and hollering and raising, partying hard. Well, that's not acceptable in Qatar, as we're going to learn later. So they've had to mount an education campaign that says, you're one of us, you're in our country now, we want you here, we're so happy that you're here, celebrate soccer by respecting our culture. So that's been an exciting thing where people have been able to learn about the Qatari culture. So as a result of all these factors working together, Qatar has a very large migrant population that's needed to meet that demand. As we talked about, 95% of their workforce comes from overseas. Where do they come from? They come from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, from the Asian countries. Now, Qatar has had some controversy. The migration of people into the country, 2 million people from East Asia into the country, has not been without problems. According to some watchdog groups, there are issues that have persisted with the non-payment of wages and the non-abolishment of a system called kafala, which ties the workers' visas to their employer. There have been complaints of arbitrary deductions to their pay, non-payment of end of service. Qatar does dispute this, but it's an ongoing situation that you'll read about in the news and that you can educate yourself on. Another issue is that your passport, when you go to Qatar, is held by your employer. An exit from the country is granted with employer and country permission. So with this large migration of peoples from East Asia, What that means is, guess what? More people are being born in Qatar, and they are of East Asian descent. And so what that means is that for the first time ever, the country is changing. They're recognizing that Buddhism and Catholicism and Christianity are the religions from these East Asian countries, and they are understanding how to coexist with each other. So when you have a large migration of peoples from different parts of the country, they bring their religion and their culture with them. So all of these things came together to say, you know what? We need an education system that will teach our youth these kind of technical and academic skills so that our country can still be within our culture and we can continue to be a thriving world power. So they created something called the Community College of Qatar. And that's it right there. It's a beautiful, beautiful building that I got to work in. And they put out basically a worldwide RFP, request for proposal, which Houston Community College responded to. They wanted to bring over the American model of education. Now, one of the things that we'll talk about later is when you bring over a model, it's not cut and paste. You have to adapt it to the modern day culture. Sheikha Moza, who was this incredible visionary wife of the Emir, wanted to bring over the American educational system. So in 1998, she created what's called Education City, which is 6 American universities, 2 European, some research centers and think tanks. 12 years later in 2010, she contracted with Houston Community College to bring over the nation's first community college model. So the question is, how do you migrate people? How do you bring over 50 people across borders into another country? How do you migrate an American educational system in the Middle East? And how do you uproot families and entire systems of operation and move them halfway around the world? How do you bring that American model of the community college to the Middle East? Well, one of the first things that we learned very quickly is it's not drag and drop. You can bring the American model, but you have to adapt it to the culture. And that's the power of the American Community College, is that you can take it anywhere and mold it to meet the needs of the country that wants to bring that kind of system to them. So in terms of the migration of people, when you take on such a venture, you have human migration. We had 50 people who left their homes in America. I sold my house, put my stuff in storage. I knew I was going on the opportunity of a lifetime and said goodbye. But we're bringing customs and holidays and food and tradition, habits, manners. How do you get that to adapt into a culture that Americans are not particularly familiar with? Where's Thanksgiving? There's no pilgrims coming. Where's Christmas? It's not Christianity. So there was huge culture shock, and very little Americans spoke Arabic, and very few, even fewer, had any understanding of the Middle Eastern culture. So we had to do, one of my jobs was really to be a concierge, to be everyone's best friend and to hold their hand and walk them through the process. Imagine uprooting your life, landing in a different country that doesn't speak your language, and virtually everything has to be started over. Exciting and terrifying at the same time. We also had to migrate educational systems. So we had to migrate the American instructional system, but we get up early in the morning and go to school, right? But that's not the Qatari culture. The Qatari culture stays up late at night and then gets up later in the morning. So we had to adapt to that. We had to migrate curriculum. The problem is that their curriculum and their worldview is different than the American view. So we had to adapt with that. For example, at that time, Qatar did not recognize the state of Israel. So when we went to order library books from the library, we could not order books that related to Israel, such as the Diary of Anne Frank. We could not order maps that had Israel on them. So we needed to honor and recognize their world view. We also had to migrate academic freedom. There is academic freedom there as long as it's in concert with the goals of the monarchy. So at first that put people back a little bit until they decided to let go and say, you know what? Everybody in the world believes that their way is the right way of doing things, but what if I let go? and say, you know what? I'm going to let go of my belief system and I'm going to open my mind to how different people view the world, and be totally open to how that can enrich me as a human being and help me contribute to them. It was a migration of teaching styles. We had to migrate things like titles. There's no such thing as a president or a vice president in the Middle East. It's not a democratic nation, so they don't have democratic titles. So there were titles like dean or associate dean, director, associate director. We had to migrate IT systems. Email is monitored 24/7, so we had to make sure that we were very respectful with our email etiquette, and we had to migrate budget and finance systems onto a different dollar system. It was no longer US dollars, it's now Qatar reals, which have a different exchange rate. In addition, in terms of the migration of people, we had to create socialization opportunities for Americans within their social unit. We became overly reliant on our Arabic speaking employees. Naturally, you cling to the people who can point you to where the grocery store is, or help you navigate in a different culture. And we realized that we really needed to have support resources in place for those that were struggling with culture shock, missing their old way of life. Culture shock is real, even if you go to a culture that's quite similar to your own. This was a culture that was dramatically different than our own. So we really needed to add additional resources there that were helpful to people and meaningful to people. We also needed to amp up our cultural training, and we had people of Middle Eastern ethnicity and culture help us learn more, so that because our goal was to be respectful of the culture and give but learn as well, to find the moderate middle ground. Additionally, when migrating educational systems, we had to figure out how we were going to fit it in with the American accreditation system. How were we going to migrate shared governance concepts into an absolute monarchy? How are we going to migrate the restructuring of credentials, where we're not just dragging and dropping the modern day Associates of Arts degree or Associate of Science degree? We needed to completely reshape our credentials that led to jobs that were relevant to the Qatari people. So in other words, we needed to change the curriculum to make sure that it met what they were looking for, to be super responsive to what they needed for their economy. We also needed to maintain the balance of us together. Is it our community college as Americans? Is it theirs? Well, it's ours. It belongs to them, and we're there to assist, but it belongs to them, and it needs to be the way they wish it to be. And that's a really good learning experience. We also had to migrate operations and organizational structure. For example, we had to migrate human resources. There's no such thing as progressive discipline. You mess up, that's not good. You're going to go home. It's not okay to be disrespectful of the host country. We had to migrate all of our systems. Imagine having to change your cell phone, your Wi-Fi, your laptop, your email. Everything had to change from an IT perspective. We had to manage all of the logistics, like some of the students at College of the Canyons have to do. We had to manage the travel, the visa, getting your driver's license in a new country, international driver's license, housing, housing supplies. What's the first thing that you need when you walk into a new house? The first? Toilet paper. You know, you learn these kinds of things that you don't even think of that you need to do to help people migrate to a different country. Now, you're probably thinking, what's it like to migrate and live in Qatar as an expatriate? Well, it's actually the cultural opportunity of a lifetime to learn and grow and expand your horizons far beyond your borders. So life as an expat is a lot of what you think it is. Islam is ubiquitous. It's part of daily life. There's a beautiful, several times a day, call to prayer music that comes on. And because in Qatar, religion is more important than doing the work of the day. Everything stops when the call to prayer comes on, and people pull out their prayer rugs and they pray. And as Americans, we needed to be respectful and step back and allow them that time. It was wonderful to have an opportunity to respect that. When you're in a constitutional monarchy, that means you cannot criticize the state. You must always be positive and supportive of the state. The wonderful things about living there is you can go, if you've seen those car commercials where the cars are skidding down these giant sand dunes, we actually did that in cars where we skidded down sand dunes. It was pretty incredible, and you can see the sand dunes there. You have to go duning. The food there is very fresh. As you can see, there are souks that are full of all kinds of Arabian goods. We talked about the Persian Gulf versus the Arabian Gulf. Now, it wasn't until the late 70s where the city of Doha became more modernized with computer records. So what did that mean? If you were born before that time, you didn't have modern day computer records. Well, what does that mean? There's no birth certificate. So what's your birthday? January 1st. So if you would ask people their birthday, they say January 1st. Everyone's birthday was January 1st until computers, modern day systems were put in place. Now, today, Qatar is one of the most modern, glamorous, wealthy, progressive countries in the world. So it's exciting to see how fast they were able to globalize through migration and educational systems. Now, it's very hot there. One day topped 140 degrees. And if it gets over 50 degrees Celsius, you get to go home for the day. What's 50 degrees Celsius? 122 degrees. Yes. So that's what it's like to live there. Now, when you're acclimating to a new culture that you're migrated to, there are some do's and don'ts. The men wear a white outfit that is very modest in nature. It is a robe called a thobe. And you can tell what country they're from by the way they fold the hat portion of their thobe. You can tell if you've seen the red checkered scarf that men put over their head, that indicates that they're Saudi. So you can see that no matter what country you're from, you can tell by the style of dress. Now in Qatar, you need to be dressed modestly, and that includes no tight-fitting clothing. There's no physical contact between men and women, including hugging or shaking hands. You want to socialize in large public places like the souks. It's super enriching and a great place to learn about different cultures, from the language to smoking shisha, to the way people eat, the types of food people eat. It's really, really exciting. It's all about respect. That's what it's really about when it comes down to it. Some more do's and don'ts. In America, we do not have a great knowledge of women and their dress in the Islamic countries. We refer to their dress as a burqa. Burqas are actually worn in Afghanistan. In Qatar, they are referred to as abaya. That's the long, loose-fitting robe that they wear that is black in color. The niqab is the covering that you'll see over the woman's face. Now, lest you think they're hot, they're very cool. They're made of like a chiffon type of a material, so they're very lightweight to adapt to the country's heat. And in their religion, they believe that it is very noble to be very modest. So some of the do's when you're there, you're going to want to drink water constantly. You're in the middle of the desert. You can haggle on prices when shopping and enjoy the richness. We see below an example of what not to do in Qatar, which is wear an exposed outfit that exposes your body. It's not respectful of the culture. Now, some don'ts. As we talked about, modesty and respect are key. So when you migrate to a new community and you're opening a community college, you must be respectful of the culture that you're in. Do not walk in thinking that your culture is somehow better and you're going to inflict it onto this new culture. Realize that you're there to contribute. You're also there to learn. In terms of socializing, there's little to no mixed gender socializing. Unmarried women typically might not have permissions to go into some restaurants unaccompanied. You do not want to approach a lady in public that you are not related to or have no relationship with and speak to her. It's considered very disrespectful. You also are not permitted to mix genders in elevators or drink alcohol. It's considered disrespectful. Some other don'ts is you don't want to photograph people in public places, especially women. That is very disrespectful. You also, Americans, we're so used to being on a schedule, and let's start at 5 o'clock, and at 5:02, 5:03, we're starting. Not so in the Middle East. It's a lot less frenzied, which is wonderful. It's wonderful. Respect the culture that you're in. Do not rush people. In terms of eating, you do not want to eat with your left hand, and you must always accept tea if you are offered it. You also don't want to show the soles of your shoe or the bottoms of your feet to other. That's considered disrespectful. All to say that you want to respect the culture. If you are migrating to another culture, you must learn and respect the culture that you're in and realize the phenomenal, enriching learning opportunity that is awaiting you there. So what lessons can you learn from this experience? What I walked away with was that we are the same, but different. Different cultures, no matter what culture you go in, we're really all very much the same at our core. We all want the same things. We want family, we want personal prosperity, financial strength, vibrant and fulfilling lifestyle. We want education, safety. We want to be valued as a human being. These are the commonalities that you can work with no matter what culture you go to. And just because someone is different than you does not mean that their ideas are wrong. They're simply looking at the world from a different cultural and historical perspective, and we need to respect that. I always use the example of a pen, and I ask, what side is this little pocket tab on? You would say it's on your left side, but I say it's on my right side. Neither one of us is lying, and neither one of us is wrong. We're simply looking at the pen from different perspectives. So always realize that just because someone's different, it does not mean they are wrong. They're simply looking at someone from a different side. Another takeaway was understanding and respect. You want to have a moderate and open-minded attitude when you're migrating to a different country or migrating systems of technology or educational systems. Do not impose your customs or your will on others. We talked about that. A big takeaway that systems that are unique to the American culture, such as the American Community College, can be migrated to different countries with tremendous success, as long as you don't drag and drop them, as long as you adapt them to the local culture and respect the local customs and beliefs. The American Community College system can be a very, very powerful tool. Today, the Community College of Qatar is 10 years old. There are thousands of students there. Their economy is thriving at a time when other economies are suffering, and that's because they've been provided an educational system that's responsive to the relevant needs and curricular needs of their specific economy. So how can faculty integrate these types of lessons into their curriculum? With Qatar being such a powerhouse on the global market, the fact that the American student does not know where it is or the role that it plays in world politics, in world economics, if faculty integrate the history of the Qatari people into their study of Middle Eastern history, it can be very impactful, and to understand the migration of the peoples who work there come from all over the world and how that's changing their society. And the kind of the world impact that the Middle Eastern nations have on trade and natural gas and oil and gas prices. You also want to use adaptability, the ability of the American community system to be molded into solutions for a receiving country, a different country. Also the adaptability in being able, the possibility for bringing short-term community college style programs that can immediately get those local workers into high-wage jobs that serve the country-specific needs of the economy. Adaptability in terms of the desperate need of Americans to learn more languages. Americans are some of the only people in the world that do only speak typically one language. So it's a fantastic opportunity community colleges have to teach students conversational Arabic, conversational Chinese, conversational Spanish, to be able to at least have a respectful, welcoming conversation with people from a different culture. So some takeaways within the context of 2020. what we've learned with COVID-19, there is hope for a more peaceful world if we agree to learn, hold back, accept, and understand that understanding should be honored. We need first to seek to understand the type of isolationist policies that you'll see in the US and some global countries are not going to solve the world problems today. Had we not been so isolationist at all lots of different countries around the world, there's all kinds of people that can take responsibility for this and countries that can take responsibility for this. Perhaps we might have had a better, faster response to COVID-19 and some of the migration issues that plague us today. We also want to share resources. If we can take a global perspective on things like medical research and the sharing of health information, perhaps the damaging effects of COVID-19 wouldn't have been so impactful. There's an interconnectedness. The power of the American Community College experience allows students to obtain those high-wage jobs and during a period of time that's specific to the country's needs. So the key is we must be adaptive and nimble. And one last comment is the importance of the community college experience, the understanding it promotes, the lessons it teaches us for comprehensive internationalization. The capacity for human change can't be underestimated as the world today seeks more humane ways to solve the problems that it faces today. And the two things of hope, the lessons that I would give you that I learned personally are we can absolutely change the world one person at a time. The power is within you to go and change the world and to change yourself in the process and to learn and grow as a human being, make mistakes and learn and grow. And the second piece of advice I would offer is never, ever turn down the great adventure. So I want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope that we had a helpful opportunity to learn a little bit about what's going on in the Middle Eastern nation of Qatar and the power and the impact of the American community college system and how exciting it is that we can migrate not only people, but systems and systems of education around the world. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
That is so exciting. But I'll hold my questions. So we have a question from a student, I believe. She would like to know, Isabella would like to know, did you find your experience living in Qatar has changed how you interact with others day to day in America?
That's a great question. Thank you, Isabella. Yes. After I left Qatar, I went to work for a college in Chicago that had a large Islamic population. That had been largely misunderstood in some cases. And so I felt so blessed that I had the experience in Qatar to understand a little tip of their culture so that I could be caring and understanding to them. And what does that mean in real life on the ground? It means that on their holidays, in Ramadan and on their Eids, I was able to call each of them individually and go by and bring a small gift of food to them and wish them well on their holiday. I was able to recognize that with a large student population that practiced Islam, that we needed a prayer room so that their studies, I saw that women were praying in different spaces and that were not conducive to praying. They needed a special private place, and we were able to institute that quiet room for them. We were able to bring aboard movies, and we got an Islamic students club that they designed. We had a festival to celebrate their holidays. So it was really exciting to be able to bring just the small experience that I did have to help people feel welcome, to feel vibrant again, to feel as if they belonged. To bring belonging and care to people is really magical. And I feel like what I got from the Qatari people, the welcomingness, the learning that I did there, I was able to then pay that forward and do it for the Arabic people in Chicago. So I'm very, very grateful for what I learned there.
Thank you. As people are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So Dr. Romali, can you think of a single impressive idea that you had to import to make the project work? And then also, can you think of an idea you kind of had to defeat in order to make it work?
Yeah. The idea that I had to defeat to make it work was, we're bringing our stuff over to you and you're happy for us to be there, and we're gonna just drop our ideas on you and it's gonna be our way. That sort of American concept where we believe that our way of life is the best way of life. And a lot of people went over and said, okay, you wanted us to come, and so we're gonna tell you what to do. And that doesn't work. They were inviting us to advise and to learn as much from them as they learned from us, and to work together in a team. So you really have to defeat the idea where it's all about us. And that's a concept, you know, when you learn about international education, is it's not about me, it's about us. And I think the most important thing we had to do to make it work was really stay close all day, every day to people, so that they felt a social connectedness. The culture shock was real. When you have to change virtually everything in your life, from the food you eat, to the place you live, to the cars you drive, to the signs you see on the road, it is scary for people. And you really need to stay with them every step of the way. Let them know that you're there for them, that you believe them, help them. It's just things as small as standing in line with them at getting their driver's license. It's important that you give them opportunities and resources for socialization, and resources for it to be successful.
So I have a question. You know, I'm teaching mathematics now, but I have lived in many places in my life as a grad student and as a professional. But and I do appreciate all the things you mentioned, you know, about the culture shock. Certainly when I came to the United States, it was lots of things were just shocking to me. And I lived in, you know, in other places, other countries, and I've experienced the same. And also what some of the stories you were mentioning reminded me of things I've heard about, for instance, when the Japanese auto companies came to America to start, you know, to establish, you know, like plants, and everything that worked smoothly in Japan didn't work so well here. Because individuals are so different. And the same thing happened when American companies went to Japan and, you know, other countries as well. But you seem to be like such a perfect, you know, person to start a, you know, a community college in places like this. So my first question is, how did they find you? How did, I don't know, I may have missed it in your talk, but how did you get involved in this? And also, are there other places where they are trying to do something similar?
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. You're so right. When I think about the types of things that faculty can take away from this presentation, it's so applicable to other things that are going on in the world, like you said, like the Japan car industry. You could rattle off 20 different case studies where this type of learning would be applicable. I actually have always stayed in touch and stayed in good relationships with my former employers. And I had a former employer at the Los Angeles Community College District who took a job as the chancellor and brought along a colleague as a deputy chancellor of the Houston Community College system. So when they won the bid to open this community college in Qatar, for some reason, I got lucky and they remembered me. And it was an interesting scenario. I was working for a wonderful school, community college district, but I was having one of those midlife days that we all have, where I was looking out the window and saying, gee, I wonder where my life's going to go next. I don't know what that is. That's exciting to me that I don't know, but I want to figure it out. I kid you not, the phone rang. And it was my former boss from Los Angeles Community College District, who was now in Houston. And he said, Reagan. I said, what's up, Dr. Tyler? How are you? And he said, well, I got something for you. Are you interested in coming to work for me and going overseas to Qatar to open a brand new community college? And I swear to you, Seb, I didn't have to think about it. in 10 seconds, I said yes. I knew it was the chance of a lifetime. I knew that I would learn and grow beyond what I've ever expanded. So it's really about making those connections, staying friends and professional colleagues with the people that you've encountered in your career, because you just never know when they're going to be in a position to offer you the chance, really the chance of a lifetime. So, you know, that old saying of don't burn your bridges, and make friends, make as many friends as you can, because those friends can bring you phenomenal opportunities that you can then give to others. So it's really, I lucked out.
So we should stay out, or we should stay out of the window more often, so the phone would just ring.
I swear to you that happened.
And how about are there any other places where they're thinking about doing something similar based on the success of this place?
You know, I'm not familiar with that, but I know that Dean Cheng Levine does a lot of work in China. I know that Houston Community College does a lot of work to bring this type of a system into Vietnam. So I know that there are countries that are interested in the American Community College system model, and it'd be really exciting to do it again, to kind of, because you grow so much as a person, and I think both sides become really enriched when you migrate educational systems to different countries that are looking to solve their local problems or opportunities.
That was wonderful. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As you know, COC is working really hard to have for students for short-term travel, we call education abroad experience. For example, if they take Dr. Riffel's history of the Middle East, let's say history of Middle East, it would be wonderful if we can have students to be able to travel to Qatar's Community College to work with them. Then we also work really hard to have our faculty have the opportunity to lecture abroad. We were supposed to have one faculty to go to Egypt, to one of our speakers last year, actually, to be able to go there and lecture, but then the COVID hit. So of course, you know, that relationship, like you said, would never, it's interrupted, but it would never just kind of cut off. So I'm just quite curious in terms of, if we are to approach Qatar Community College in terms of, we would like to have this kind of, you know, institutional level collaborative projects, such as sending faculty there, we're inviting faculty here, we're sending our students there. What would you recommend would be the best approach?
I think they'd be very open to it. The Qatari people are incredibly welcoming, cosmopolitan. I think they would be very open to it. I would go through their president. I would also, the president that I worked for is no longer there. But I would go through their president. Also, Qatar, the state of Qatar has a consulate in Houston, and they go back and forth, and they have a great relationship with different American entities. That might be a good option. I can help research that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more question, but I do want to leave the time for participants. This is a wonderful opportunity, guys. This is the time to ask questions, or I'm going to take up all the time.
I've got a very quick question that you probably could answer yes or no. I'm wondering if the construction of the building was part of this project, I assume as well. Maybe when you started, there was just dirt and then there was a building before you were left, or was that building already there?
There was an intention to build, but they found a beautiful space that already existed that they could renovate and convert. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question.
Please.
It's more about how prepared you felt to adapt to this culture before you left. So I've been in Egypt and Morocco, and especially as a woman I was young and in college, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go there, but I didn't prepare. I just landed in a new place and just like, oh, okay, there's places as a woman that I can't be. And I was like, I had to figure it out the hard way. So I'm wondering what your preparation was like before you left, and kind of who did it, any training, if at all, as far as that process, even on the ground too, when you arrived.
I was the lead, so I was first person on the ground, along with a team of about 5, and I was not prepared at all. I was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and this eager American. I felt kind of like an idiot. Later on, I realized, and that's what helped, I think, in us preparing a preparation program for faculty and staff as they came over there 3 months later. Once we prepped everything, you really have to have cultural training and acclimation. And even then, you need to be with them on the ground, probably the first 6 to 8 months as they go through culture shock. You also definitely, wherever you go, want to learn at least some conversational, respectful language so that you can show respect to your host. I felt very disrespectful. I felt like I was being disrespectful by not learning Arabic beforehand. I learned a little bit of introductory Arabic when I was there. If I had to do it over, I would learn it beforehand to be respectful.
I'm going to stop sharing if you guys don't mind, so we can see everybody's face a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one last question. So when you have such an exciting project that's going on, that's changing, that, as you know, so many people's lives, you know,
Yeah.
as it develops, how do you know when to pull yourself out? Right. I think many of us, we always engage in exciting projects, but when do we know it's time to either, you know, transition to the next person, or it's time to kind of move on to the next project? So how do you know that? And the reason I ask is because I think we have quite a few students here who, as you know, they're finding their ways in life, right? And then they find this exciting idea they want to work on. And how do you know when to walk away? And how do you know when to hand it over to somebody else?
That's a great question. When you feel like you've done all that you came to do, and it's not that there isn't more growing for you to do, because you never can learn it all, but I felt like my job was to get it up and running, and I got it up and running, and I got students in and moving their way through coursework, and I felt that was the job I was hired to do. And I did that. And so I felt comfortable then leaving it in the wonderful hands of the Qatari people to, it's their college, it's done their way, that's wonderful. And they had it. They were fantastic people. When you know that everyone is okay, when you can leave the room, you know, when when the trays of food have been laid out and everybody's eaten, you've done your job. So I really felt that you know, as much as I think I contributed to them, I think they contributed more to me in my growth as a person, if you're open to that. And I feel like I'm so grateful to them for learning and growing. And when you know that you're at that point where you kind of got it, it's not that you can't learn more about that culture, but you now know enough to know how to learn what you don't know.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other participants who would like to have the opportunity to ask the questions before we do the poll at the end? All good. I have to say, I was really looking forward to this presentation, and I just feel I learned so much from your presentation, Dr. Romali. It's so, yeah, your participation experience, and also just overall how you tie into the theme so well for our forum. In addition, I think more importantly is you also show us that if you're faculty, how you can integrate this as part of your curriculum, and as a student and as a college, what we can do about it. As you know, we all strongly believe in the mission and the functions of community college, and that's, I think many of us would have the other opportunities to work at somewhere else, and we are at the community college because we truly believe in the mission and the function and the opportunity that it provides for the next generations to come. And with your work, and you bring it even over, you know, globally to the other nations, and I think that's quite admirable. Thank you so much for your time. And then for those of you who love Dr. Romali's work, she's going to talk again, I believe, on Thursday.
We're going to talk about China.
Yes, and then I just can't wait to listen to hear more about your presentation. So before everybody leaves, if we may, because this is a grant-funded program, so it is very important for us to take a survey at the end. Thank you, Marisa. And can you let us just show questions, 3 questions? It would help us to see how we did, and also help us to plan the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.